So if you want to be a missionary, do you need to learn the language? Well, I think the answer is yes, but the reason might not be what you expect. And okay, this might sound lame, but I think the reason why you need to learn the language is love. Now to explain, when I say learn the language, the word learn, that's key. See, we tend to, or at least I know I used to, focus on the goal of having learned the language. But actually I think it's much more important that we focus on the journey of learning the language. For one thing, when we think about mastering a language or becoming fluent in a language in order to be a missionary, well, that puts massive pressure on us. But it's not about us. God can speak for a donkey. He doesn't need us to be fluent in languages. Everyone God works with is imperfect, and God is totally fine with using imperfect people for His purposes. Especially if, for instance, you're like me, a Westerner trying to learn Japanese. That's a very hard language to learn, and depending on your background, your education, your level of linguistic competency, some people will learn languages very fast, other people will take a really long time. Not to mention, depending on what kind of ministry work you're doing, you might not have a lot of time to really give yourself the full-time language study. And if you have a family as well, with children running around you, well then it's just not really realistic, maybe, for you to think about becoming fluent before you're going to be able to call yourself a missionary. But whether or not the goal of becoming fluent is realistic, I think it is really important that we try to learn the language of the people that we're working with. See, there's a verse that's become really important to me, to how I think about what it means to be a missionary. 1 Thesslonians chapter 2 verse 8, where Paul writes to the church there, and he says, "Because we loved you so much, we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of Christ, but our own lives as well." Love is not content with just sharing the good news of Jesus. Love makes us want to share our lives with Him as well. And that involves learning the language, because language is part of life. And so sharing your life with someone involves learning the language. Even if it's only simple basic phrases and greetings, showing that you want to be able to talk to them in their heart language. Now look, sure, you can share the gospel with people without knowing any language at all. You can hand out tracts or Bibles, you can speak through translator, interpreter, you can speak in really basic English, people would understand that maybe. And I've seen people, and there are stories of people who have seen incredible fruit without speaking a single word of the language. But in order to share your life with someone, well, for that you need to learn the language. Because the more you understand the language and the culture, the more you are able to share your life with them and understand their life as they share it with you. Communicating across language barriers is really hard work. And either I can expect the other person to work hard to understand me, or I can work hard to make myself as easy to understand as possible. And vice versa when it comes to me understanding what they're saying and them being able to relax and talk to me naturally because I've done the hard work. And look, for me at least, language learning is really hard. I'm not a natural linguist. This has been a long journey and it's still going on. Learning Japanese for me requires sacrifice of time and energy and money. Requires strategy and thinking and planning. It's hard work. Language learning is hard work. And that's why it's about love. And because it's hard work and language learning requires that kind of intensive study, it means there are things which I have to sacrifice. There are things which I would love to read or watch or listen to in English that I give up so that I can immerse myself as much as possible in learning Japanese. Now, I don't know whether I'm ever going to master Japanese, but I know that every little step I take on the journey of language learning means I'm able to share my life a little bit more with my Japanese friends. And so honestly for me, I don't stress anymore thinking about mastering the language or becoming fluent. I'm just focused on walking in love as I learn how to share the good news of Jesus and my life with those around me. In other words, learning a language is not something you do in preparation for becoming a missionary in order to share the love of Christ. Learning a language is a way of how you share the love of Christ. It's part of being a missionary. Love shares, And because love shares, love learns. So whilst you're learning a new language now for the sake of missions, it's really important to ask yourself the questions: how am I using the language I already speak in order to share the love of Jesus and my life with those around me? How am I using my words? What am I saying and what am I not saying in order to share the love of God with people? And is my desire to learn a new language born out of this motivation to share the love of Jesus with people? So let me encourage you, as you give yourself to the long, hard task of learning language for missions, to keep focusing on Jesus' love for you, and let that drive you and motivate you in your studying and your learning. If you have any questions about these things or thoughts, ideas of your own, please share them in the comments below. And if you are learning a language, let me know what you're learning. I'd love to encourage you in that journey. I've got other videos up on the channel to do with missions. There's a couple other ones coming out on this topic of language learning and how that fits with our spiritual growth. So please, if you're not already, subscribe, like, all that jazz. But thanks for dropping by, and I'll see you in the next video.